Welcome on a Monday night to Generation Movie. My name is J.W. Colwell. I'm joined as always by my good buddy and host and movie partner in crime, Rich Drees.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. If you like the content, please subscribe to the Indiescape Network YouTube channel or our Facebook channel, our Facebook page, or our Instagram page, or our Threads page, or our we have so many pages. But so if you like it and you like what you're seeing, like and subscribe, please do that. First things first, we're an entertainment show. We like to talk about movies. But I do have to say I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed wholeheartedly at the scope of the election. And I was telling Rich about this today. I don't know how I'm going to go about letting you know how I feel. But it could be one of two ways. I'm either going to openly laugh at you when things start going completely haywire, or I might just shut up and just watch movies and tell you what movies to go see. But I'm not going to stop talking for people I like, and I'm not going to stop protecting people I like, family, friends who feel lost. So I don't know how you feel, Rich, but I know we talked about it, but that's how I feel. So I'm letting everybody know. I hope you stick with me through it. If you don't want to, that's cool.
I'm kind of on the same page. I think when times get a little bit more politically charged, we wind up looking at movies in a bit more of through a bit more of a political lens. So there might be a little bit of a shift in some of our discussion here, understandably. It was something I was thinking about this weekend, actually, as I was working on my review of Gladiator 2, because
you got to see part of the Wikiator event happening in the next 2 weeks. So Gladiator 2, Paul Mescal.
Yep.
Right.
And let me tell you, nothing like 48 hours after an election watching a movie that kind of hints about the decline of a fallen empire there. So,
the end of democracy? What do you mean?
With twin mad emperors,
twin goofball emperor, people who, look Trumpy. Anyway, so the big question is, Rich, and here's the thing. I think Gladiator is one of those movies. First off, it's a guy's favorite, like it's your dad's favorite movie from the last 20 years, right? And it's a movie that guys flock to, and it's a movie that guys sit back and go, you want to be them, you're rooting for the good guy. But this is a big jump. Ridley Scott's 86. He's getting up there. He's a little long in the tooth. How are the action scenes? How does it pace? Is it? I don't expect it to be as good as Gladiator, because I don't think a lot can be.
Well, it's not. It's not.
That's good. That's easy. That sets expectation.
Yeah, and I mean, my review published this morning when the embargo lifted today. So there's a lot of reviews out there, but maybe if you go read the one at FilmBuffOnline.com, I wouldn't be too upset. But I'll just kind of flat out say that I headlined it with Gladiator 2. You'll be somewhat entertained.
You're being tricksy. You're being tricksy.
I mean, the action is great. It starts off with this invasion by the Romans of this city. A city on the coast. They're like on a cliff, and the Roman boats come in and lay siege. It's really exciting. It's fun. The various gladiatorial contests are really well staged. The one thing I didn't really like about the original Gladiator was that strobic look to a lot of the fighting.
Yeah, it looks,
and that's gone. And that's gone. So already that part is at least a step up for me.
Obviously, if you're stepping into Russell Crowe's shoes, this was at the height of full Crowe, right? This was full Russell Crowe, right? He was bouncing around movies. He was in, he was in LA Confidential. He's in all these movies, and then he comes out and he hits in Gladiator, and he just becomes like a megastar. Then he does Master Commander, which is a that movie needs a sequel. Like that movie, him and Paul Bettany. I really wish. I know Ridley doesn't focus on those things, but I really wish we had gotten a Master and Commander sequel. But Peter Weir doing less as well. So, but what do you think? Is it going to be crazy? Is it going to be a crazy weekend? Is it going to do well? Is it going to exceed expectations?
It's going to do well, yeah. Despite what any critic has to say, and it's getting positive reviews, but not rave reviews. For me, the script, the story itself was a little thin. We get like the points of there's this bit of intrigue going on here and some other intrigue going on over here, and ultimately they're going to collide in a very Greek tragedy kind of way.
The problem there is the tragedy and the backstabbing in Gladiator was pretty straightforward. You had one person backstabbing and taking power. I think one of the problems I could foresee with the movie is that we're all the way in on Game of Thrones. We're all the way in on all these backstabby kind of shows. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's very hard to get jazzed.
I'm just going by the original, comparative to the original. In the original, we learn a lot about, or at least something about Maximus's companions in the gladiatorial arena, and we learn something about some of his comrades in arms from when he was in a Roman legion and stuff like that. And that all these characters, you feel something when something bad happens to some of them. You absolutely go, oh man, he was cool. I like that dude. And there's outside of one guy who is basically like a self-taught doctor, who treats the gladiators, who is very handy in terms of, dumping plot exposition and doing one thing the plot needs to happen. There's nothing, these guys are faceless, and it loses a lot of impact. There's a moment of going, oh gosh, that guy got his head chopped off. That's messed up. But you're not like, oh, Bob the Centurion, I kind of liked him. He was funny. He got his head chopped off. Oh, that sucks. There's a difference there, and it weakens the overall impact of the movie, I think.
That's the key. I mean, I think we're stepping down no matter what. A couple comments as we start. Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
JW looking all sexy with the beard for No Shave November. No. I was looking today. I have one. I'm sorry, I'm pointing to the wrong side. On this side of my face, there's one lone hair that's bright white and jutting out of my upper brow. I've never seen anything like it. I think it's hideous. This is the last you're going to see for the No Shave November. I've lasted 11 days. I've done the best I could. I need to shave. I'm seeing friends this weekend. We have Thanksgiving coming up. I can't do this. This is hideous. I don't like how it looks. I don't like how it feels. It's going. So there's that. Good evening, friends. Good evening. So, Rich, you weren't the only one to see the movie this weekend first. So I saw a movie too.
Okay.
It's not Gladiator. It's not Gladiator 2 that everybody's looking forward to, or Wicked, or anything like that. I did see this, and okay, so a couple things.
God bless you.
I went in with very low expectations. I know how much the movie costs. I know that there was problems on the set with Evans and Dwayne Johnson. I know, but the movie has an ace up its sleeve, Rich. And we were talking about this today. You made the joke, and you can say it again. The ace up its sleeve is that Santa is played by J.K. Simmons. J.K. Simmons doesn't know how to give a bad performance. So it has that going for it. I will say it's a lot of world building. It's a lot of exposition. It's a lot of action. My two nephews were very much involved. They were talking very much about naughty lists. They were talking very much about trying to save Christmas. And I will say, I liked it. I didn't hate it.
They're going to get very invested in the idea of Santa Claus being kidnapped and Christmas not happening.
Yeah, very invested. But I will say
to a kid.
I will say there are standout characters. Garcia, the polar bear, is pretty cool. There is a very big exposition dump of what is going on, how it's being played out, what's being. It is a big budget action comedy that also veers a little bit into the dark. So if you're taking little kids, I wouldn't do that because Krampus is very involved in the trailers, but the level of Krampus that we get is not necessarily safe for everyone. So, but I will say, special effects are okay. The movie cost a chunk of change to make for Amazon, and Amazon, I feel, is just going to release it to theaters for 2 weeks, get destroyed by Gladiator and Wicked, get out of theaters, and immediately launch it on Amazon in December, so that people are want to watch Amazon. I will say I didn't hate it. I liked it. I kind of had fun with it. I wish they would have reversed the roles. I was talking about this a little bit. The idea, sometimes we have movies where I think if they reverse the roles, it'd be far more interesting. Like if Evans were the head of Elf instead of Dwayne Johnson was kind of like the shady guy. I think it would have been a little bit more interesting. The other movie that comes to mind, I was telling you, is Heat. The Heat, if they had switched Bullock and McCarthy, I think it could have been genius. But it has everything you want. It has, Christmas and good feelings, and Dwayne Johnson's playing a guy who's been seen a lot of Christmases, and he's a little bit downtrodden by how bad the adults are in the world, and so he's resigning from his post of protecting Santa. And I will say, no matter what, you've not seen the villain, which for any movie, any a superhero movie, not seeing a villain in trailers at all is either a really great thing or a bad thing. But in this case, I think it's a pretty good thing. I think the breakout character in the movie is Krampus, because it's a really interesting design on Krampus.
He's fun. I ran too fast. I got a Krampus. He's big and he's right after eating.
He's gregarious in his violence. So, like I said, there was some cursing that had the little boys I was with.
You're giving it a good review. My friend Mike, who writes for Cinema Blend, saw it about 2 weeks ago when he was doing the
Kill Me. Like, it's one of those movies where it's
he gave it a glowing review as well. I will probably check this out.
But like I said, I think the part of this kind of movie, the whole succession of this kind of movie, the success of this movie is how much you believe in the world building, and they do a pretty cool job. Like, we don't see any of the other mythological characters, but Lucy Liu plays the head of the mythological characters organization that corrals them and protects them from humans by creating domes and all kinds of cool things so that you can't see them. And like I said, I think it's a pretty good, it's fun. We've had a lot of talk in the house today about not wanting to be on the naughty list or being a naughty list level 4. And so to win, you know what I mean? Like, it's funny. I will say I don't think these two do not, it should be easier than it is. With the talent right here on screen should be super easy for them to get along, but I think this is the one where The Rock got in a lot of trouble for peeing in bottles and holding people up for 5 hours and if Chris Evans if Chris Evans was the one being held up, I could see being a little pissy, especially coming from the Marvel world, right? The other thing I'm going to say is there's a casting choice that I won't talk about until everybody has kind of seen the movie or it's been out in a while. I will say Mrs. Claus is a chef's kiss. She's an actress that I really like. Has had 2 or 3 television shows. She shows up and she's just a bubbly, warm kindness that I always love about her. So it's a modest cast.
I'm excited actually because of that. I'm like, oh, we haven't seen her in a while.
Yeah, you said, you were like, where has she been? And I'm like, I don't know, but when she shows up and she's talking about baking cookies, it works. And like I said, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's death cult, like there's a death, ring and all kinds of weird stuff going on. I liked it. I had a good time at it. I laughed. The audience was laughing. Everybody seemed to be into it. Nobody really hated it. I didn't hear anybody walking out going, "Wow, this movie belongs on Amazon." You know what I mean? Like, so a win. I don't.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's really interesting where it plays. It should have opened this weekend. It should, in all reality, it should have opened this weekend. It could have made its 40, 50, 20, 30 million dollars, whatever it is. And maybe had another week to drop another week before we get to Wicked and Gladiator and Moana, which is it's a great way to lose screens.
Yeah.
And so I don't. It's not getting, but it is a big budget, big epic kind of like. It's 2 hours and 3 minutes long too. It runs action film, but the action sequences are all pretty well paced out. There's cool gadgets and all kinds of Santa Claus stuff. And J.K. Simmons is playing Santa. He's pretty. That man is jacked. That man is jacked.
I know.
A couple comments. Hey, brothers, on long walk with the pup, and the video keeps cutting out, but I'm here. Okay, thanks, Sean. Good to have you.
Oh, the pup said hi.
We love pups. Get through the uncomfortable patchy beard phase like I did, JW. Rock the look. No, it looks terrible. I feel it. I had fun with Red One. Going to be a regular Christmas time with the grandkids in the upcoming years. There you go. So Joe saw it too. There you go. I'm not crazy. But that's the funny thing. Like, I think you could go into it. I'm going to say this before we move on. We could go into it and be really mean to it. I'm sure you could. Anybody can. But you ever watch a movie that's like a big action movie that's kind of patched together in pieces and you're like, oh, it's trying so hard. It's trying so hard. I'm willing to forgive. Bless its heart. Yes, a little Southern. I'm willing to forgive some of the patchy spots. I do like the villain. I don't like the later forms of the villain. I like the early forms of the villain. So I'm gonna get that out of the way. But other than that, it's pretty fun. Krampus, I think, is another. I was looking at it. I'm like, he's definitely gonna be an action figure. So is the J.K. Simmons Santa. That is a must buy McFarlane toy, by the way. J.K. Simmons is Santa. That's a must buy. Christmas Men in Black. Yeah, I don't think it's as good as Men in Black, but it's pretty good, and it has a good Christmas spirit, and it has an interesting concept about. There's one interesting Christmas concept, which is a requirement in any kind of a Christmas action-y comedy, and that's that adults are just bigger versions, like their kid is inside, but we just need to find it sometime. Which, after this week's election, is definitely something we need to talk about. Finding our inner child. Hello, gentlemen. Hello, comedian Robert Bass.
Hey, Robert.
Congratulations on your show, by the way. Big first show. Lots of.
I apologize for missing it, but as we just
he was watching Gladiator. He had better things to do, like he often does.
Oh,
no.
I consider that as work for this show.
You couldn't even get it out. You're like, oh. But anyway, congratulations on your show. Maybe we'll see. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. He said you're welcome. One other note, I do want to talk about it's not successful, but it's not as bad as we first thought. Let's talk about the weekend numbers, Rich, where Venom: The Last Dance is holding on for dear life.
Which I finally got to see, by the way.
I haven't seen it yet. I think I'm going to try to get that and Heretic, and maybe Red One again, or something else this week. I'm definitely going to try to get Venom and Heretic, but I've had a couple things to do the last couple weeks. But Venom is
a fine $5 Tuesday movie. It's a fine first movie of the day matinee price of $6.50 or whatever. It's okay. It's
only down 39%, 15 million this week.
I mean,
it's over 114. It's over 114 million
domestic.
Heretic opened on 3,000 screens to 11 million, which is pretty good for a nobody knows what the fuck it is movie, right? It's creepy Hugh Grant, and Hugh Grant hasn't opened a movie in what, 15 years. So, but again, impressive that Venom has only fallen 39%. We'll see what happens with Red One, if anybody's in the Christmas spirit. And that's about. There weren't a lot of stories to talk about today. We didn't have anybody pass away, knock on wood. We didn't have anything. The only other thing we could talk about really quick is that the Mission Impossible, the Final Reckoning trailer dropped. That's a yes. That's and I don't know what happened with Dead Reckoning not hitting. Like I don't understand it at all because it was pretty amazing. And this trailer, if you haven't seen it yet, go watch it immediately. It's a killer. If it is the end for Ethan Hunt, it is a killer last trailer. Or first last trailer for Mission Impossible, which comes out next May. That's one of the big May tentpoles. And I hope that for whatever reason we didn't go see Mission Impossible in theaters the last time, we don't keep it going. Like, because I don't understand that. Did you find that weird that Dead Reckoning didn't hit? Because it was pretty good. Like
it was. I think we were still coming out of COVID a little bit. People were not back in the theater going habit.
It lost a lot of screens. It lost a lot of screens to Barbie and Oppenheimer too. It was right in that, like it was Indiana Jones, Mission Impossible, Barbie, Oppenheimer, all in that like succession.
Yeah, and it had a ridiculous price tag on it because basically Tom Cruise said, we're going to pay all our crew during lockdown. And then when we get back to work, we're going to rent a boat, a cruise ship, and put everybody on the cruise ship to keep them isolated in a bubble. And it was kind of bananas what they were just kind of like spending to do all this.
I don't know. I was telling you, I think he gives me 120%. He's one of those actors that I don't ever go, hey, it's a Tom Cruise movie. I'm not going to get my money's worth. Damn it. But speaking of not getting your money's worth, let's talk about this movie tonight. This, I got to tell you, not, as a first debut movie, right? Like we don't think about it because I think most people think of Spielberg's first movie as Duel, even though that is a television movie.
Yeah, so it depends how
you want to look at it.
But trust me, I'm pedantic about it. So yeah, this is his first feature film.
Well, and also like the thing about Duel that was interesting was that this was a kid that snuck into the Universal lot every day of his life. And so when he finally got to make Duel, he knocks it out of the park, and then everybody starts knowing his name. But this is the movie.
Even before he did Duel, I mean, he had been doing some TV stuff.
Night Gallery.
His first was like 2021. He did the middle segment of the Night Gallery pilot, and then he did.
I think he worked with Joan Crawford on that. He worked with Joan Crawford on that episode, that particular episode.
He did like a very early Columbo, one of those TV movies, and a couple of other things. There was a pilot that didn't go, and so
I mean, he was around. He was hanging around, but this is the first time he gets behind the camera of a major motion picture, and when you start like looking at it, like the interesting thing 50 years later, Rich. But as we talk about production, but the interesting thing for me, just from the fine points early, is how much of his fingerprints are all over it. Before we get started, you know what I mean? Like his fingerprints are all over it. Like things that themes, character arcs, shots. You know what I mean? Like they're all there. they're all in the movie, right? So production is one of those.
Well,
this is one of the productions where I haven't heard anything bad.
Well, I do have
right?
a few things here
Yeah,
that I was able to find. Okay, first of all, I hope if you hadn't watched the movie before and you were looking to watch it this week, I hope some of you guys saw the post I threw up on the Indie Escape
AMC
Network and on the
last
Loud
night,
Dirty
right?
thing on Sunday afternoon, that it ran on Turner Classic Movies last night. I only found out about it like 15 minutes before I posted that.
I'm not gonna lie, we have good record with that stuff. Where
we do have a kind of a fun unintentional
knack.
coincidence.
Let's call it a knack.
Stuff like that. But
we're knackered.
Anyway, if you watched it, you'll have noted, of course, it says screenplay by Steven Spielberg and blah blah blah. And Spielberg kind of came up with this idea one day when he was living in Laurel Canyon outside of Los Angeles at the time. Picks up his newspaper, sees in the a headline about a modern day Bonnie and Clyde. And so he reads the article and he goes, wow, this would make a great idea for a movie. So he calls up his two friends who are writers, Hal Barwood and Matthew Robbins, and says, hey guys, let's develop this into an idea. And they write the script and everything. In the meantime, he does Duel, and he starts getting inundated with offers. He's at Universal, where he did Duel, where he did Columbo and Nightgown,
where he was meant to be honest. Universal is, if you look at Spielberg's career, Universal is where he is home. All of his, except for Raiders, all of his bigger hits are Universal movies.
Yes. So he takes it to the execs, like I think it was Richard Zanuck at the time, and says, hey, I got this idea. This is what I want to do as a feature. Because meanwhile, Duel had done well, had been critically well received, did great ratings as a TV movie. They took it as a TV movie. They took it and ran it theatrically in Europe at the time.
It was gangbusters, and it ran a lot on television too. Like it ran a lot.
Yes, he's getting a lot of scripts sent to him, saying, "Hey, do you like this? Do you want to do this?" And he's going through them. He just doesn't like them, but he keeps going back to this idea about this modern day Bonnie and Clyde. And this is the early '70s. We're starting to get a little bit of the bloom off the rose of the like the '60s hippie movement and stuff like that. We're starting to get a little cynical. Bonnie and Clyde kind of fed into that a few years earlier. I saw an interview with Spielberg where he also said he was pulling from inspiration from the Billy Wilder film Ace in the Hole with Kirk Douglas from about, I think it was 62, I think it was. But it's a great movie and I recommend it. And so they start building this and they go to
it is a cynical movie though, but if you're still reeling from the election, be careful with Ace in the Hole. It's like recommending somebody the sweet smell of success. It was 52, by the way.
Yeah.
Second time sweet smell of success come up in the last 2 weeks. I'm sorry, but it's great.
That's okay. It's a freaking great movie. So the studio's kind of like, yeah, okay, but maybe we can not do this ending the way it is. And Spielberg, they kind of go back and forth about it a little bit. He goes, we'll shoot it, then we'll look at it. So he goes off to Texas. They shoot it. I'm sorry. The one of the conditions was you need a movie star to star in this film. And so he thought immediately of Goldie Hawn, who was just starting to break out into doing some movies. Most people knew her just as the giggly, sexy, funny girl from Laugh-In and on TV. So, she went up to her house, they read the script together, and she was all in right away. And that's what helped got the movie greenlit.
I put that in the preview for tonight. It's one of her best compact performances. Because she gets a lot to do in the hour and 50 minutes that the movie runs, right?
But so they go to Texas. they, pick up, the rest of the main cast. You've got William Atherton, who was doing a lot of stage work at the time. Ben Johnson, who had just come off of filming a Peter Bogdanovich movie that I'm suddenly forgetting the name of.
What is going on? What is going on with us? We're off.
Michael Sachs. And a bunch of the like small day players.
Last Picture Show? Are you talking about the Last Picture Show?
Yeah, Last Picture Show. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. That's okay.
A lot of the day players, though, were just average Texans. Spielberg said all the people, all the police radio operators were actual police radio operators from like Austin and Dallas, I want to say, and they just went, and they, because he went out to Texas. He did a couple of ride-alongs with some police. He kind of got a feel for how they work and how they, talk and how they act. He really liked the sound of the dispatch dispatchers. So he just brought a couple of them in to read the lines.
And you can tell, though, he was enamored with it, because it's midway through the movie, it becomes like another character. Like the radio and the radio being used becomes like another character.
Yeah, but this is all part of a style I see through early Spielberg, that even in a fantastical film like Close Encounters, there's still a very grounded realism to everything. The drunk in the cop car at the beginning of the film was just somebody they found in a bar in Texas. The casting director found them and was like, "You got a good face. Want to be in a movie?" And they didn't have any lines. They just sat him in the back of the car and said, "Okay, talk about, just start talking." And they filmed it. And that's why it felt so real and so earthy almost.
The movie has a cinema verite vibe to it that is immediate. Like, so, when you're talking about like the producers, right? He talks Richard Zanuck and David Brown to let him make this movie. The thing there is, if you know those names, you should, because he would go on and we'll talk about this in Legacy, but talking Brown and Zanuck into making making this movie is basically, part of his, how do I say it? It's part of the way he got into, the way he basically broke into Hollywood and did everything. Like, he was already a face on the lot
with certain people, and I was just about to get to yes, and who they all worked together as a core for a lot of his career.
Right. The most important one. The most important one, I think, maybe. I don't. Okay.
I think both of the people I'm going to mention are very equally important in their own way. But the first one is cinematographer Vilmos Zsigmond.
He's fantastic.
Yes. He'd been working for years. Spielberg knew of him. He was Spielberg's only choice. Once they got together, one thing I found fascinating, and I found it out after I did my rewatch earlier this evening, as I was just doing some quick other research. They didn't really use lights or bounces or anything like that. It was all
because that was Zsigmond's style, right? Zsigmond is known as one of the 70s new wave, on the road
documentary light.
Yeah, documentary cinema verite style. We'll use the light we have, right?
Yeah.
Which
and they were using a new type of new camera from Panavision called a Panaflex. I know Wikipedia says they were the first production to use it. They were actually the second production to use it. I can't remember who the first one was, but Spielberg says, no, we were the second because we got it a week late because the other production ran over. And there's a shot in the film where the camera kind of pans, does a 360 through the whole car as they're driving along. That's because you could do that because the Panaflex camera is so small. You could stick it on a monopod, and just have somebody underneath it kind of doing this. And Spielberg said he designed that shot just to show that camera off. He was just like, hey, we got a new toy. Here's what it can do.
There are shots in the movie that are astounding. And then I was looking at pictures to try to make the movie, to try, to show some pictures while we're talking about it. And one of the pictures I thought was a fake picture. But in reality, it was a real picture from... And I was like, oh my God, that shot. There's a shot when, Ben Johnson's driving the car and Goldie Hawn is kind of like peering out the window at him. And they do a giant close-up, and it's the reflection of Ben Johnson's eyes on the upper quadrant of the screen and Goldie Hawn in the bottom part of the screen. It's astounding. The look of this movie, though, is very 70s, and very cinema verite, and very like nobody looks like they're like it doesn't look like a movie. It doesn't look like a movie at all. And like Goldie Hawn doesn't look the greatest. She's got bumps and bruises, all kinds of things going on. Very minimal, clothing changes and whatnot. But the cinematography, the look of the American West is
and that's something I'm going to get to. I think when we get to legacy and stuff, I think because this movie does kind of sit in the subgenre of bad guys on the run movies that were very popular in the early 70s
in the
as
70s.
A reaction.
Yes, it was.
As a reaction.
I can't even tell you the sheer volume of films that have fallen into my feed because I picked the Sugarland Express today. Dirty Larry, Crazy Mary, Easy Rider, Vanishing Point.
Easy Rider.
So a couple comments. Hey boys, hi Raven.
Hi Raven.
Randy introduced me to Duel on one of our early dates. Great movie it is. And then Jamie Hill said, "Hey Jamie Hill, how are you? Good to hear from you."
Hey Jamie Hill.
We're talking about the Sugarland Express tonight. The other big, we talked about Sigmund. I do want to talk about, it is the first movie where Spielberg and this guy from the Boston Pops named John Williams will work on a score.
Yeah, but it is, just a couple of other quick notes before on the production that, I have here.
I got you. I got
it. They kind of, Spielberg said, I had this whole thing. I didn't have a whole lot of time to shoot this. I had the whole thing storyboarded, but they were also very open to the idea of just catching something. Like shots of those kids, watching them as they drive by, stuff like that. Wasn't, necessarily storyboarded. The pig, the little piglet that gets passed to Goldie, and then she goes, "Oh my God, it's peeing on me." And that was not planned. That literally on the day somebody had a pig and Spielberg goes, "Hand it to Goldie." Pig gets handed to Goldie, and the pig decided, "Here's my big acting break," and starts whizzing on.
Look, not all pigs can be Wilbur, okay? Not all pigs are one spectacular pig. Not all pigs are Babe. Like they get nervous on cue. The verite in the people that are used in the film is also pretty spectacular. It's a very small cast with and then people that are real are they're very noticeable. You can notice.
Yes, and it's great because there's all those faces have such character. They remind me of like when the Coen brothers kind of get a little funky with some of their casting, like in like all the extras faces in like something like Hudsucker Proxy, where they're just like
Fargo
is people in movies. They're not movie faces.
Fargo's the other one, right? Fargo's the other one where they everybody's talking the same way. Everybody looks a little bit chunkier because they're in the Midwest, and everybody's wearing some sort of like pullover jacket. You know what I mean? Like in it, and they're like that's one of the things that's interesting here is that Spielberg. Again, it's not the first movie where he'll take people that are in the area, right? And we're going to talk about it with the legacy, but he learns on this film, I think, to embrace whatever's given to him. is part of this
Yeah.
production, right? The shots,
And
the lighting, when it happens.
yes. And one other thing about that though, and this is kind of techie, so I apologize in advance if it sounds like what they do it. When you're trying to shoot, like say you're shooting inside a car, which and there's a sunlight outside, and you don't have any other light, you're going to get some shadow. And if you adjust your camera aperture to kind of brighten up the face, the windows where the sun is coming through is just going to blast out white light. It's just going to, blow that out. It's going to look terrible. The way to get around that when you're shooting with 35 millimeter film was doing a process called flashing the negative, where you just kind of like expose just a little bit of light to the negative before you put it into the camera. And that's the technique they use there. And that's how you get, absolutely clear, and well lit faces inside the car, but you can also have a very good view of what's going on in the background and everything. And it's, again, something that adds to the verisimilitude of the film.
The ambiance. The movie looks like a documentary. Like it feels and looks like a documentary. It looks grainy. It's got everything going on. It's got character, right?
It looks as hot as the characters say it is.
Yeah, and
you watch that movie and you're just like, ugh.
I think the casting. I think Goldie Hawn deciding to do it. I think bringing in Ben Johnson after the Last Picture Show. So it's like, but like part of that. I was reading something where Spielberg said, I think one of the things he said was, I just couldn't pass up the opportunity of Ben Johnson being a cowboy in my movie. Right. And for people who don't understand what Spielberg's saying there is Ben Johnson made a ton of great cowboy movies. And one of the reason I have my thing the way it says tonight, you forget how great those old time actors are. Ben Johnson was in so many movies, and he was great in many of them. You know what I mean? Fort Apache, Red River, She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, Rio Grande, Shane, Oklahoma. You know what I mean? Like he's in all these movies, and he's One Eye Jacks, right? Cheyenne Autumn, Major Dundee, all these. Hang 'em High for God's sakes, and of course the Wild Bunch in '69. So when Spielberg gets him cast, Spielberg is like a giddy kid, right? He's like, I'm working with somebody that I've definitely seen in movies. And like I said, this is a star vehicle for Goldie Hawn. Like I was trying to come up with exactly, she's right before she hits. It's right for her. This is 74, so it's 50 years old. And if you look at her filmography, right, this movie is right before she hits that prime, right? So 74 is Sugarland Express, The Girl from Petrovka. Then she does Shampoo in 75, The Duchess and the Dirtwater Fox in 76, Foul Play in 78. And then, Lovers and Liars, Private Benjamin, Seems Like Old Times in the next. So it's right in her wheel. It's right before she becomes her own business, the Goldie Hawn business. So, I think it's an interesting get. I think it's a great vehicle for her in the sense that she gets to do everything and whatever. Budget on this movie, super, super cheap. $3 million. $3 million bucks, Rich.
Unfortunately, though, okay, so Spielberg finishes the movie, gets Johnny Williams on the soundtrack, hands it back in to go back to the thing that the studio was worried about the end. They were still not happy with it, and so they forced Spielberg to put that scroll on the end that ultimately says, yeah, she did some time, and then she was reunited with her son, and they live off in Texas. And
because it's okay. So part of the problem with the production, when you're watching it, is that the '70s were. You're right. The bloom is off the rose a little bit, right? '70s counterculture, but it was at a time when in the '70s where they still wanted people to be punished for crimes, right? Like not that we don't want people punished now, but it was very much a you shoot at somebody or you pull a gun on somebody, there's a very good possibility you're going to get shot, especially if you're in Texas, right?
Yeah.
So they
But
kind of like.
here, I think what's interesting though is the cops here are kind of going out of their way not to kill these people.
Well, Ben Johnson is. Everybody else is kind of like.
Ben Johnson's the one holding the rabid dogs back.
Yes, Ben Johnson.
Unfortunately, he didn't count on the border patrol.
Ben Johnson can't take it seriously. And then when people start showing up with guns and like acting crazy, there's a sequence in the middle of the movie where a bunch of like yokels show up, and it causes like a chain reaction of like gunfire all over the fucking place. And he takes the guy's shotgun, and the guy is like, "I'm part of the junior militia," or whatever the fuck. And it's like he takes the guy's shotgun and literally breaks the lights off his car, breaks the fucking harness of the lights off his car, and then gets all the bullets out, hands the gun back to the guy, and then says to his deputy to arrest him, and walks away. And it's just like,
the movie is very clear about where it stands.
Well, it's just the idea of like, why are we punishing this woman? We don't actually know what she did, and like, and for Atherton's character Clovis, he walks out of jail 4 months before he's supposed to get out. So it kind of just spells out of control. Okay, so it opens. It doesn't open. Hold on, let me get the branding up. Let me get the thing up. Box office. It opens. It doesn't necessarily open across the country, right? It's one of the weird openings in the 70s. So it was released it premiered at the New Directors News Film Festival on March 29, 1974, and then it was released theatrically in New York on March 31st. Then it had a year-long worldwide theatrical rollout. It was held in its French premiere for Cannes in 1974. And then they just did a 50th retrospective screening of the film at Tribeca this year in June 2024, which also included had Goldie Hawn. But that screening at Tribeca was the first time that he had seen the movie publicly in front of the theater, in front of a live audience, since its initial release. So it opens to 6.5 million in the States. It ends up grossing 5.5 overseas for a worldwide gross of 12 million. It is, and this is not, whatever. It is Spielberg's lowest grossing film of his career. And then,
but when it opened, he's off at Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts, prepping his next film, a little thing called Jaws.
Yeah, well, also with Zanuck and Brown, which name. That name is so important. Zanuck and Brown, they're the guys that give him the keys to the castle.
Well, while he was working on this movie, SUGARLAND Express, he went into their office one day and literally saw galleys of the book because it hadn't been published yet, and picked it up and said, "Hey, what's this?" And like the secretary's like, "Yeah, take it home, read it." I don't know. And he came back and was like, "Guys, I want to make this.
I want to do this."
They had already promised Jaws to another director, and they had to wait till that guy dropped out and then they immediately turned around and said to Spielberg, Come on, quick. You can make it now. And, and the rest of course, is cinematic history.
It's cinematic history. Well, and that's the thing. The box office isn't great on this movie, but what I would say is the interesting thing here is it didn't get a full kind of theatrical release, even for a 70s version, right? It kind of just plays straggles throughout the country, right? And I think that's kind of interesting. But it was like, it did eventually get pulled from theaters because Universal kind of thought it was a dud, but it is become, as we've progressed, the box office for this movie hasn't mattered. Critical response then and now. So all over the place on this one early, but I don't know that it's, a lot of it's, we use Rotten Tomatoes as a good way as an aggregate. It's at 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's at 66 for the audience score, which tells me that the audience isn't necessarily getting it, and what they're coming into is like, oh, it's a Spielberg movie, and it's what I think the most impressive thing about it is how much his mitts are all over it, right? Like how much, the broken down, the like the little things. Like I was watching it today, Rich, and I was like, there's a scene in the middle where the mother of the baby, the foster mother of the baby, and it's the kind of thing you don't really notice unless you're watching for Spielberg vibes, but the husband grabs the baby and is like protecting the baby, and the wife grabs a vase, right? And like, and she picks that because she's a rich woman who has gotten this child through foster care, and it just makes me root for the Goldie Hawn character more. And it's the kind of thing it's necessary in a Spielberg movie,
and
is that he builds, like, he'll give you character influence based on somebody doing something. Like Ben Johnson, you get an immediate, like, he's tough but he's fair.
Yeah.
Like,
and ultimately too, for Spielbergian touches, we ultimately learn that that baby is going to grow up in a in a one parent family, family situation.
Yes.
No dad around.
No dad. Shocking. But that's what I mean. Like, there's Spielbergian touches. I will say, I think it's one of, from a nuance perspective, this is before Goldie Hawn bought into that she only had to play loopy roles, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she's charismatic, she's mean, she's desperate. There is a beauty to this performance, Rich, that I think it's a really great performance. Like, it's way early. You know what I mean? For her, she's not a superstar yet, but she has so much meat to chew on. She goes through so many different things. And the other thing that I think is most intriguing about the movie is that it becomes this kind of, like, for Spielberg, he really does like people that are kind of like folklore heroes, right? Like that one mother who comes to the car and says, "Don't let anybody take away your baby. That's your baby."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Probably another non-actor cast in a role, one-line role.
And the other interesting acting point is that Atherton has to play everything like, they're not loopy, right? They're not dumb or mental. They're just, he's in a situation where he can't disappoint her, right?
No, and I think their youth,
really good. It's a nuanced performance.
Their youth gives them, not like we said, they're not dumb. They're not mental cases. But it gives them a like a naivete. They don't know how the world works. They just think, we can bust out of jail, go grab our kid, and go live in Mexico. It'll be fine. And he even says, "Hey, I was thinking." When he says to the cop, he's like, "Hey, I was thinking about maybe becoming a
highway patrolman."
Highway patrolman, and the cops is like, "Are you out of your mind? You have all this in the middle of all this."
No, it's not. It's much simpler than that. He goes, "Clovis, they don't hire people who have criminal records."
Well,
it's so matter of fact. It's so matter. He's shaving, and they're shaving, and it's like, but clearly, like, that's another thing. The performances across the board are pretty stellar. There is, I will say, we're before Animal House, and oh my God, where is he? Maybe it's not the right guy. It looked like the Animal House dean was one of the cops, but maybe I was wrong about that. I'm probably wrong. But anyway, I was like, there is definitely a thing to it where the ignorance is bliss, and like, but every once in a while, the window of William Atherton's soul, the eyes, where he just he kind of just puts his head down and looks out the window like, we're not going to make it. Like, this isn't going to work. And the movie builds and has a crescendo, and they get to the point where they are folk heroes, and there's all these people on the road, and the giant long chain of cars, the inevitable accident that happens because everybody's kind of being a hot dog. Some of the cops are being hot dogs or whatever. Is an excellent, like, as a car wreck, Rich. Spielberg knows how to do those. Like he knew how to do that first. Like it's the first thing he knows how to do, and it kind of just like it's bumper cars, and it's like, what the fuck happened?
There's a lot of first of all, one little piece of thing I uncovered was after the film was over, he bought that patrol car, and every now and then he would drive it down to the Universal lot when he had a meeting, and then back home to Laurel Canyon with its 50 bullet holes and everything in it. So he so he's got a good sense of humor. And
it becomes a very sweet movie, but it also becomes like there is an inevitable like you've broken all these laws, and
which is often the case with these
the crime movies. Yes,
movies. Vanishing Point, Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry, which
I think I said the two interesting ones I'm going to bring to the table. I'm going to say A World Apart.
Oh,
the Kevin Costner movie, right? The Costner Clint Eastwood movie. That's a fantastic criminal on the run movie. The other one I'm going to bring up, and this is a silly one, Rich, and don't hold me to it, but I'm going to say it to you because it reminded me so much of the people crowding the cars and giving them gifts. But the movie from my childhood that I saw on HBO every second of every day for 2 straight years was a movie called The Legend of Billie Jean.
Okay, with Helen Slater.
With Helen Slater. And I was thinking about that movie a lot today. Fair is fair. Fair is fair. And it's just the interesting folklore nature of the movie with the people sitting on the side of the road, like the one lady's holding up like sheets that say, her name in the movie is Lou Jean Poplin, and it's Clovis Michael Poplin, right? And Lou Jean Poplin, somebody holds up a sign that says, "We're Poplins too," and I'm just like, holy shit! Like, it becomes like a circus time, like. And I thought I was really kind of pleasantly surprised. I know I've seen the movie, but I was pleasantly surprised that Ben Johnson never gets heavy-handed. Like, it never becomes. It's a nuanced performance for somebody that is in total charge. The movie starts for him inside a courtroom where he looks like he's getting grilled by a lawyer, and he doesn't want to fucking be there at all. I want to be out on the road. I want to be protecting my lawmen. I want to be, making decisions. And, and then as the decisions mount, and eventually he has to make a kind of a devastating, crucial decision. It's and then you have the other cop, Officer Slide in the car going, I don't think I think what he's saying to you is he can't keep his promise. He can't keep it. And thinking about it in the 70s, lawmen were coming down hard on people, right? So the idea that you kidnap the cop, drag all these cop cars hundreds of miles, right? But it's like the direction is so nice. The cinematography is great. The music is quirky and very kind of folksy. Like it's the most folksy John Williams score you'll ever hear.
Yeah. It's crazy to think like 3, 4 years later, John Williams is gonna, just upturn the entire world of movie music with his Star Wars score.
Right, and
Light years away, the other
and Jaws
in just 2 years.
Right, and the other thing is like those scores, like when John Williams is the score of our lives, right? If you're a generation movie fan, if you like movies, John Williams, various points of our lives have been scored by John Williams, and we didn't even know it. You know what I mean? And this is such a quirky, wonderful score. I was looking up like what he used and like the different things he used. Toots Thielemans and the Boston Pops Orchestra. And can you believe that there was no album released for this movie? This movie didn't have a soundtrack until 2024, until this year, June 15th. They released the score.
Who put it out?
It looks like it says it's Boston Pops Orchestra for 1991's the Spielberg Williams collaboration. The score was not released as an album until June 15th, 2024. I'd say like Vibri as a Vibris or whatever. It doesn't really say.
Maurice?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't say though, but the idea that this score wasn't encapsulated on an album and it could easily be playing at a Woody Guthrie concert or, you know what I mean? Like, or at a folk concert, you know what I mean? It's just got this, it's got an outdoorsy charm. The cinematography is great. The real light, it looks hot. It feels hot watching it. I will say it didn't get great reviews. Like it's at 87 on Rotten Tomatoes, but those are all realistically later. Ebert only gave it 2.5 stars, as did Gene Siskel. And Siskel's response was, whereas Bonnie and Clyde prompted our sympathy for its heroes because of their winning style, the Sugarland Express asked us to care for Clovis and Eugene because they're thick-skulled and because presumably every mother has an inherent right to raise her own baby. It doesn't work. That's mean. That Gene Siskel being mean there. If the movie finally doesn't, and this is what Ebert said, if the movie finally doesn't succeed, that's because Spielberg has paid too much attention to all those police cars and all the crashes they get into, and not enough to the personality of its characters. I don't agree with Ebert there because I think the characters all get through. Like Atherton gets through, Goldie Hawn gets through, both Ben Johnson and Slide get through, right?
I wish Ebert had gone back at a later point and kind of gave it a reevaluation, because I don't think he would say that now. You know, later on.
The Goldie Hawn performance is really nuanced because she's playing every, like, I was thinking about it today, Rich. Like, you could look at any child in, like, Mother in Trouble movie, right? And this performance has every scale of those movies, right? She's at one point desperate, at one point angry. Like there's a sequence where she beats the ever living shit out of William Atherton. You know, like, and like she spans the entire range. And these are difficult movies. I don't know. It's a good crime movie, but it's also like a good on the road movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like seeing the American West.
I mean, it does have the genre typical downbeat ending, where not everybody's going to make it out alive. The fact that
and that last shot of her is devastating. That last shot of her in the car, the head kind of like bloody, and just like, Ben Johnson comes up, gets the gun off of Clovis, who's covered in blood, like who's covered in 70s paint blood. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's all over the place. They use a diaper to try to patch him up, and it's just, but it's and then of course they tack on the kind of happy ending that she serves 5 years in prison and gets her kid back. And it's like,
again, studio mandated though.
Yeah, just it's not great. But
I mean, it's like this better than the ending of Vanishing Point or Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry, which both have the exact same ending, and it's not very positive.
I think there's a great moment though. Ben Johnson has to make the tough decision, and Slide, the person that's been with him the entire time, who's been kidnapped, who's been taken on this trip, and who has kind of gotten to know them the best, right? Michael Sachs plays Patrolman Slide. He says to them, he stole my gun, but he wasn't going to use it. Like he wasn't going to use it. Like, and Ben Johnson's like, yeah, I know, but we weren't going to give him the kid. Like, and he just puts his gun back in his holster and kind of like, and it's just him kind of like on the Rio Grande, over the Mexican border, kind of like looking into the water as the credits roll. A beautiful credit sequence, like beautiful, like you couldn't pay for that kind of stuff. The other critical response is like a little bit more glowing to get it to the 87. Pauline Kael said, in terms of the pleasure the technical insurance gives an audience, This is one of the most phenomenal debut films in the history of movies. That's about right. It's all there, right? Everything that he's going to become is encapsulated in that movie, and I think that's where you can get a real interesting. If you like Spielberg movies and you've never seen it, it becomes one of those movies that you should see just to get an idea of where he came from and how he, I'm a Spielberg fan. So like when I was younger,
this is
this
is definitely a cornerstone, the foundational building block for so much that is going to come from.
There are even kids on bikes, Rich. There are kids on bikes. There's a moment in the movie where the kids on the bikes kind of getting mixed up with the cops, and I was like, oh, I hope they don't have shotguns. But everybody, I'm not going to lie about this. Everybody in this fucking movie has a shotgun. There's not a single person in this movie that doesn't.
I think the baby had a shotgun. So
the baby had a shotgun and an apple. But
crazy.
Okay, so legacy. Obviously, the legacy for anybody who's watching.
I think we just talked about it.
We did. But it's a great place if you like Spielberg and you get into Spielberg. It's a great place to go back and say, "Ooh, it's all there, man. It's all there, right?" And then, of course, his working with Zanuck and Brown leads to Jaws. Like, it's a direct line from this movie to working on Jaws. Like you said, the story about when we walked in and read a book that wasn't out yet. Said, "Ooh, I like this. I'd like to direct this." And then all of a sudden, also, like, the relationships he makes, he is one of the filmmakers in our world, legacy-wise and franchise-wise. He is a franchise unto himself, and he also incorporates people that become part of the franchise, too. Spielberg isn't himself a franchise, but he also has all these people working with him that have been with him a long time.
There are a number of directors that John Q. Public knows by name. George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Alfred Hitchcock. I dare say, though, the number of directors whose names have become adjectives is marginally smaller. Hitchcockian, Spielbergian, Tarantino-esque. I can't think of another one off the top of my head.
Kubrick-ish. Kubrick is one. Kubrick has to be one. Hitchcock.
Kubrick is known, but I don't think anybody's ever turned his name into an adjective. Well, okay, I take that back.
Kubrickian.
Yes, I take that back because Dennis Miller on the White Album, or the Off-White album, his comedy album from like the late 80s, makes a long-winded joke full of weird references that ends with something about throwing a femur bone up into the air with Kubrickian glee.
Yeah. The current ones,
2001. But beyond Dennis Miller, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say Kubrickian.
That's true.
In any other context.
The current one would be Nolan. Nolan would be people like Nolan, but nobody says it.
People like him. I don't think they use.
They don't
Nolan
love him. You're right about that. I agree with that. I don't love Nolan either. I agree.
Yeah.
I would also say Goldie Hawn. This is the launch point of her career.
Yeah,
she gets Shampoo next. She gets Shampoo next, and then she kind of just, it's a straight shot through the 80s to the mid late 80s. I would, the other legacies are like, it is one, and you talked about it. It's one of a series of road movies that also involves some sort of crime that sets the road movement because of the crime. A World Apart is the one I was looking at. Legend of Billie Jean, I couldn't get out of my craw today, out of my head, because I was just like, when they're handing her a pig and they're handing her this is from me, my hardware store, and this is from my granddaughter, and it's a little teddy bear. That teddy bear ends up dead on a Mexican road. That teddy bear ends up fucked. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
A lot of those kind of like criminals on the run movies were kind of like almost B pictures. They were exploitation. They probably played a lot of drive-ins more than they did in indoor theaters. But this feels like it's a little bit. I mean, aesthetically, it looks very of a piece of that genre. Story-wise, it's very much of a piece of that genre. But there's something about it that kind of elevates it a little bit. And I've been thinking about this, and I can't quite put my finger on it. I don't know if it's because I'm bringing the idea that, oh, this is Steven Spielberg at the beginning of his career, and I know what his career becomes.
Oh, so it's a chicken or the egg thing.
Yeah,
it's a chicken or the egg. Chicken or the egg question. I think it might be that he's. I think it's both. Hear me out. I think it could be both, because I think what you're hitting upon is there's a certain expertise to the movie that goes beyond some of the other movies in the genre, right? There's something to it. There's a gravitas. There's the people involved are working a little bit differently. You know what I mean? And that is part of Spielberg's allure, charm, is the sheer, the eye he brings, the skill he brings. And it's just kind of like, it's engaging in an interesting way that it's there in his first movie, and we notice it because we've seen a lot of his movies, but it's there, right? So it's not that the Spielberg came first. It's that his eye and everything came first, and then the legend. Like, the legend actually doesn't get written until 1975, right? The legend doesn't get written until Jaws. Then it becomes everything that he does is kind of got. Then he makes Close Encounters, then he makes Raiders, then he makes
his TV work is solid. There's some great camera stuff. I remember seeing
the Night Gallery episode.
His Columbo episode opens on a shot of a car coming down the street, an overhead, a high angle shot of a car coming down the street of Los Angeles. And then the camera starts to slowly pull back, and we're really up high. And then suddenly, oh my God, we were just standing at the window on a high level of an office building. And then we pull back and we're in the room. It was an amazing shot. I was just like, holy shit, how did they do that? Even that stuff, he was building blocks of talent, of ideas, of a way of looking at stuff.
Because he was the funny thing you mentioned that, and this is a good place to end, I think. When he was working on those movies and shows on the Universal lot, he was derivatively called the Wonder Kid, right? They made fun of him because he was obsessed with shots and angles and how you're going to do this and what's the color palette going to look like and how you're going to flight it. And he was obsessed with all that shit, and they used to make fun of him for it. Like, kid, just shoot the fucking shot. You know what I mean? Like. And so, like, I think that's a real interesting. But
if he just shot the shot, we wouldn't have a great moment in Sugarland Express where we're with the cop assassins at the foster home.
Yeah.
With with that one shot with the gun. You start off behind the one shooter, and all you get is just the gun, his shoulder, his head, the back of his head, and the gun. And then the camera starts to move in while also adjusting the focal length. So basically, all this distance is kind of collapsing. And it's the same thing he does in Jaws with Roy Scheider when he first sees the shark on the beach. It's that same style of shot. And it just kind of collapses in as the camera kind of is picking up more and more of the car coming down the street. But the police sharpshooter stays pretty much solid in the thing, and our eyes are drawn to the car, and that ratchets up so much tension in that one moment. And it's such a technical shot, but it looks so damn good, and it's so damn effective. And if he hadn't been the wonder kind working at Universal for 5 years of television, he wouldn't have known to do that. And so I think we're really lucky that he did.
And like I said, this is a great movie to watch and just get no, Raven, it is not Tim Burton, and we're talking about Spielberg. Burton.
No. I think that came in
for the esque,
about 5 minutes ago. So yeah, yes,
sure.
that would be another director.
That would be another one. Yes, I would agree. Well done, Raven. But
yes, thank
so
you for that.
long story short, this is a great movie for two reasons. One, it's just a great movie, and secondly, it's a great movie to go back and just kind of time travel and go into it going, I don't know who the Spielberg guy is, because it kind of flashes on the screen and then it's over, and then the movie starts. You know what I mean? And you're in it. It's a great movie to watch. Rich, where can people read your review of Gladiator and find all your stuff?
My review of Gladiator 2, as well as everything else I write, can be found at FilmBuffOnline.com. We have a Facebook page that links whenever we post up a new story. We also on the Facebook page have some other stuff, this date in history things, some late breaking news when sadly a film or television great passes away. So if you're on Facebook, go over there and like that. Just find it, search for Film Buff Online. We also have a Twitter page for Film Buff Online, and I also have my own personal Twitter page, Twitter feed, and also on Threads, both under the name Film Buff, not Threads, excuse me, Blue Sky, under the name Film Buff Rich. However, I am kind of winding down or slowing down a lot of my Twitter use. So look for me being more active talking about film.
He's got the U.S. government at his control. He doesn't need our money. You can find me,
so I'm over on Blue Sky.
JW the Movie Guy on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky. We're on IMDb. I will also be tomorrow night with my good buddies doing Loud and Nerdy. Might have some guests, might not. Who knows? Kyle is on vacation, though, so it's definitely going to be me and Jerry. Could just be me and Jerry. It might be me, Jerry, and a couple other people. Who knows what's going to happen? Next week, Rich.
Yes.
Next week we can find a way, Pinot Grigio, and find our way into a bottle, and we can maybe work this things out and get some Alexander Payne in our life. And we'll be doing Sideways, one of the great comedies in the last 20 years. Paul Giamatti, Thomas Hayden Church, Virginia Madsen, Sandra Oh, written and directed by Alexander Payne. One of the great buddy movies, but also one of the, it's a great movie. And it's a great way to it'll be our last show of November. And then, we got Sideways next week. We got a week off for Thanksgiving, so you can go to some screenings and have a good time. And also so we can enjoy our families. And then December 2nd, we're back. Starman, one of John Carpenter's most underrated films, with a fantastic performance by two people. Jeff Bridges and Karen Allen are both amazing in it. Yes. And then I don't have a picture for this one, but so it's wrong. I can't do that one. The 9th, we're going to do Santa Claus the movie. Okay, I don't have a picture for it yet. We're going to do Santa Claus the movie because we're going to get a Christmas visit from the Natasha Claus. And Natasha Pugitsky is going to join us. We're going to do Santa Claus the movie. Also funny that we're doing Santa Claus the movie because America just elected John Lithgow's bad guy from the movie as president. And then on December 16th, wrapping up our year and getting us ready for our big Christmas break, we get some rules and we find some agua and we watch one of Joe Dante's incredible movies. And it's still one of the best movies. Caused the full rating. It's got the little Amblin right there on the bottom of the thing. We're going to do Gremlins for Christmas. I will have one of the best stories you will ever hear for my Gremlins. My Gremlin story is an amazing story showing a child Gremlins and not thinking about the particular Phoebe Cates Santa Claus story.
Oh.
So be here a couple weeks for that. Thank you for joining us tonight. Everybody have a great week. Go see some movies. Bye.